but I'm not representing the Internet Archive at this point in time. I'm just going to give you a quick update on a collaborative project that is based in the United States. It was actually incubated in April of 2007 at an IAPC General Assembly meeting that was held in Canberra, Australia. The National Archives of the United States had made an announcement while we were meeting that they had determined they would not archive the end of the second George W. Bush presidential administration. And the US-based members of the IAPC thought that that was not an appropriate sort of approach to take, and that it was critically important that we find a way to create an archive that represented sort of the body of government before this major change of administration. We ended up doing archiving in 2008 and 2008, spring of 2008. We only had 6 months to prepare. So we archived in 2008 and 2009, and the collaboration actually continued beyond that early effort. And what I'd like to give you an update on is the work that was performed in preparation for the 2012 elections and the end of what we now know as the first Obama administration. So Abby Grucky with the Library of Congress unfortunately wasn't able to make these meetings. So these are slides that she prepared, and I added just a little bit of detail to try to give you a flavor for the project and where we are. To sort of give you an insight into who some of the working members are, certainly the Library of Congress, the Internet Archive, the California Digital Library, the University of North Texas. What you might not know is that we actually have had involvement from a number of federal agencies and departments within the United States, including the U.S. Government Printing Office, and actually this time around we received a lot of unofficial support from the National Archives. We're hopeful that by the end of the next Obama administration we'll have official involvement from the archives themselves. So in terms of why we did this, I think some of the reasons are obvious, but I think that what we determined was there was no one officially responsible for creating a capture of sort of the transition that was happening at the federal level. And we were committed to trying to create a collection of material that could be used for research, but also we've discovered sort of in the past 4 years a wide range of public uses for the collections that were created in 2008 around the end of the Bush administration. So what we really wanted to do this time around was start a little bit further ahead. We had a little bit more time to prepare. We engaged library information science schools as well to try to see if we could get some curatorial support and help from students at different levels of their education. We experimented with a number of other participants in order to try to broaden the scope of the effort, but also increase the quality of the input in advance of the crawling and the life cycle of crawls that we were engaged in. I won't go into the project goals, but you can review those later. We used a broad range of volunteers to submit nominations for websites that should be included in the scope of the collections. We received over 5,000 recommendations for specific resources that should be included across the executive, judicial, and congressional branches of government. And they had a wide range of forms that were also on .org, .com resources, in addition to the traditional .gov. Legislation was actually passed in late 2008 that opened up the U.S. federal government to have official presences on websites across the .com. So you have social media presences, you have video aggregated on YouTube. In order to find our official government materials, they're now widely distributed across the web. And so part of the challenge was trying to go through and individually identify some of these points of presence. Now, we used the nomination tool that was actually developed by Mark Phillips and his team at the University of North Texas in support of the 2008 project. We've continued to evolve that. We've used it in the Access Working Group for a number of Olympics collections. We've had some other event-based archives that were developed around it within the IPC, but this was, again, utilized to try to assemble all of the inputs for the material. In general, we tried to eliminate any local or state level material, and we did not, in this cycle, make a lot of effort to try to support login to resources that were blocked by some sort of point of presence where you had to actually have an identity in order to interact with the content of a particular resource. We did some other innovative work in this context. Engineers actually worked directly with Dave Rabin at ENA, Adam Miller on the Internet Archive team, actually implemented a proxy-based capture implementation. We routed all JavaScript through that proxy in order to try to identify resources, locations that were embedded in scripts, and captured those in partnership with the traditional crawling. So we actually had a hybrid architecture that was deployed for the crawls that supported this particular collection. We did respect robots off of .gov resources, except in contexts where we had specific permission to ignore robots. So there was some content that was missed just because we didn't have permission to collect it. And we discovered that over the course of the collecting, there was quite a significant evolution in content that was happening while we were trying to create these captures. So some of the material does not replay particularly well, and we're now kind of engaged in a fairly extensive effort to try to figure out how to optimize for replay of some of these resources. Just to give you a general sense of the time frame, multiple partners in the collaborative actually did crawl during the course of the project. We do massive, what we call bookend crawls that the Internet Archive facilitates. We started those in September of last year, and the idea is that we attempt to crawl everything sort of under the scope that was defined by the seeds that were nominated. To give you a sense of sort of the scale of those crawls, the first bookend crawl was about 12 terabytes of data compressed. The second bookend crawl, which was run right after the end of the inauguration this winter, was over 18 terabytes of data that was collected and captured. We did a number of focus crawls in between, prioritizing for specific events that were coming up. As you may or may not know, there was just a ton of debate going on at the federal level around finances, gun control. We had a number of major policy issues in the United States that were under evolution and discussion between sort of election day and inauguration day. So we made a lot of effort as a group to try to collect materials relating to those debates. Now, in terms of the project itself, most of the crawling is concluded. We are still doing some minor patching in places where we can find specific files used to replay resources that might have been missed at different stages. So what we're really focusing on next is trying to centralize all of the crawl data in one location so that we can make this accessible as a public collection. So that means the content that's written to work files will be available to researchers in bulk if they wanted to get a copy of it. We will have lot file data sets, CDX data sets. We will have other derivative data sets to support both research and access. This will be indexed for full-text search. It will also be made available from the end-of-term website that's actually hosted by the California Digital Library. And so we're in the process of using both the curator-generated metadata and the extracted metadata to create records that will allow for support of the facets on the full-text search side, and also the browsing and some of the more innovative access that we've been experimenting with. There's also a fair amount of experimentation that went on with this collection around alternate quality assurance workflows. So we, for example, did a slash page crawl at the beginning of the process where we did in-depth embed analysis on those slash pages to try to precede crawling. Then at the end of the crawl lifecycle, we did some additional data mining and analysis in order to determine if there were resources pointed to as outlinks that had been missed in the nomination cycle that should have been included, and try to pull those into some of the scope if they were off of .gov. Anything on .gov at the federal level was included. We also, again, tried to examine places where embedded content was not correctly identified and incorporated that into sort of the patch process. So I think that's it in terms of the basics. If you have any questions, feel free to ask any of the members of sort of the working project, and I can answer any now if there are specific ones.